It was very scary when Saudi Arabia executed 37 people in a single day in 2019. Mujtaba al-Swaikat's story stood out as one of the most heartbreaking. Even more disturbing is the fact that he was horribly tortured before his tragic end. He was arrested as a teenager simply for participating in anti-government protests. His case shocked the world and highlighted just how brutal executions can be. But Saudi Arabia isn't the only place with shocking execution stories. Around the world, many different methods have been used, each more haunting than the next. In 1977, Oklahoma became the first U.S. state to use lethal injection. At first, people believed it was a more humane alternative to older methods like hanging, firing squads, or the electric chair. The idea was simple: inject a mix of drugs to sedate the prisoner, paralyze them, and finally stop their heart. But in reality, what seems simple on paper can go terribly wrong. On April 29, 2014, in Oklahoma, one of the most horrifying botched executions occurred. Clayton Lockett was scheduled to be executed for kidnapping and murdering Stephanie Neiman. However, the fourth line was inserted incorrectly, causing the drugs to seep into his tissue instead of his bloodstream. Lockett woke up mid-procedure, writhing and groaning in pain. Witnesses described the scene as chaotic and traumatic. What was meant to be over in minutes dragged on for 43 agonizing minutes before he finally died of a heart attack. This incident reignited the global debate on whether lethal injection can ever truly be humane or free of pain. Then there's the electric chair, which has a long and controversial history. First developed in the late 1800s as an alternative to hanging, it made its debut in 1890 with the execution of William Kemmler in New York. The method was partly inspired by the current war between Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse, as Edison wanted to demonstrate the dangers of alternating current electricity. Ironically, a quest for a more humane method gave birth to one of the most gruesome forms of execution. The condemned are strapped into a wooden chair with electrodes attached to their head and legs. A powerful electrical current is then passed through their body, designed to stop the heart instantly. However, electrocution has often been anything but quick and painless. On July 8, 1999, Alan Lee Davis was executed in Florida. Convicted of murdering a pregnant woman and her 2 children, Davis's execution went horribly wrong. His nose bled profusely, his face turned bright red, and severe burns appeared on his head and legs. He became known as Bloody Allen, and shocking photos of his death sparked outrage and renewed legal challenges against electrocution. Despite being used less today, the electric chair remains a chilling reminder of the dark side of capital punishment. Supporters claim it ensures justice, but critics argue that it violates basic standards of humanity, even in the most serious cases. Hanging is one of the oldest execution methods, dating back thousands of years. Historically, it was used for crimes ranging from theft to treason. During the Middle Ages, public hanging served as a grim warning to others. The process is relatively simple. The prisoner is dropped through a trapdoor with a rope around their neck, intended to break the neck quickly. The UK relied heavily on hanging until 1964, but today, Iran is known for its frequent use. Iran carries out the highest number of hangings globally, often in public squares. These events are intended to instill fear and demonstrate power. One particularly haunting case is that of Ruth Ellis, the last woman to be hanged in the UK, on July 13, 1955. Convicted of murdering her lover in a crime of passion, she calmly faced the gallows at Holloway Prison. Public sympathy for her, a young mother trapped in an abusive relationship, sparked intense debates over the morality of the death penalty and ultimately contributed to changing public attitudes in Britain. Mistakes in hanging can make it even more horrific. A rope too short leads to slow strangulation, too long, and it can decapitate the prisoner. Despite its decline, hanging is still legal in countries like India and Japan, keeping alive difficult questions about justice and humanity. Firing squads trace back to the 1400s, traditionally used for military crimes and treason. This method involves a group of shooters aiming at the heart to ensure a quick death. Utah is one of the few places where it's still an option, partly because it's seen as more reliable and allows prisoners to choose their method of death. A famous case is that of Gary Gilmore, executed by firing squad in Utah on January 17, 1977, after killing 2 men. His execution was the first in the U.S. after a decade-long pause on the death penalty. Gilmore famously said, "Let's do it," before he was shot. Words that sparked cultural fascination and discussions about the ethics of capital punishment. Firing squads also burden executioners. Typically, only one rifle has a live round while others fire blanks, so no one knows who delivered the fatal shot, meant to spare the shooter's conscience, though it raises troubling moral questions. The gas chamber was developed in the early 20th century as a supposedly more humane method. In 1924, Nevada executed G. John, the first person to die by cyanide gas. The prisoner is sealed in an airtight chamber where a chemical reaction releases lethal gas. One of the most disturbing gas chamber cases happened in Arizona in 1992. Donald Eugene Harding, convicted of 2 murders, struggled violently and gasped for air for over 10 minutes. Witnesses reported his red face, convulsions, and horrifying sounds, leaving many shocked and traumatized. Though rare today, the gas chamber symbolizes how new methods often fail to eliminate suffering and raise moral concerns instead. Stoning remains one of the most barbaric and painful execution methods. It involves a crowd throwing stones at a partially buried person until death. Small stones are intentionally used to prolong pain. In 2004, in Mecca, Iran, Atefe Sahale, a young woman accused of crimes against chastity, was stoned to death. Reports revealed severe legal irregularities and personal bias by the judge. She was buried up to her chest, and the crowd threw stones until she died. Her death drew global outrage, exposing deep conflicts between traditional punishments and modern human rights values. Beheading, historically seen as swift and honorable, has been practiced since ancient times. In medieval Europe, it was a common punishment for nobles. The guillotine, introduced in France, became infamous for its efficiency. Today, Saudi Arabia is most associated with beheadings, carried out under Sharia law for crimes like murder or drug trafficking. In 2019, Saudi Arabia executed 37 people in one day, including Mujtaba al-Swaykat. Arrested as a teenager, he was tortured into confessing to spreading chaos. Despite international pleas, he was beheaded publicly. These executions aim to deter crime by instilling fear, but often highlight stark human rights abuses. Boiling people alive, once used as punishment in ancient Mesopotamia and medieval Europe, might be one of the most gruesome methods ever imagined. In 1531, English cook Richard Roos was boiled alive for poisoning food. In Uzbekistan during the late 1990s, political prisoner Muzaffar Avazov was allegedly boiled alive after torture. His burned body was returned to his family, shocking the international community and symbolizing extreme state cruelty.
Death flights, perhaps the most chilling modern execution method, involve throwing prisoners alive from aircraft over oceans or remote areas. This practice became infamous during Argentina's Dirty War, 1976 to 1983. Thousands of dissidents were sedated, loaded onto planes, and thrown into the sea to erase their existence. Journalist Rodolfo Walsh was among the disappeared. His body was never found. Death flights instilled terror, silencing dissent while denying families the closure of recovering remains. Finally, crucifixion, most famously associated with Jesus Christ, is an ancient punishment involving nailing or tying a person to a cross until they die from exhaustion and suffocation. In Roman times, it was meant as a public spectacle to deter rebellion. Although rare today, crucifixion is still legal in Saudi Arabia under certain interpretations of Sharia law. In 2019, Abdul Karim al-Banawi was executed and crucified, his body publicly displayed. This act drew worldwide condemnation and reignited debates about human rights. Crucifixion remains one of history's most painful and humiliating forms of punishment. Victims suffer both physically and through total public degradation, stripped of dignity and left on display as a warning to others. Each of these methods, whether by needle, noose, bullet, gas, electric shock, stone, sword, boiling cauldron, aircraft, or cross, reveals the darkest extremes of human justice systems. While some argue these punishments serve as deterrence or retribution, they also expose deep moral and ethical questions about the value of human life and the true meaning of justice. That's it for today's video. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell so you're the first to know when a new video drops. Until next time, stay sharp and stay safe.